Evening. It is Thursday night. It is 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Nobody cares Pacific. It is the ASTV Thursday night podcast. We got Trevor as always, and special guest substitute star all the way from Japan for some reason. Gali, how are we, Gali?
What's happening, guys? How are we doing tonight?
Fantastic. We're doing good, and we've managed to get over our technological snafus by MacGyvering things, as we do on Thursday night. It's the way, as they say in the Mandalorian. Trevor, how are you?
Doing all right. Got a lot of stuff going on, but we're here. We're here.
That's the main thing. It's possible or not, but we're here somewhere. And then, how's the plant? That's the most important question that everybody wants to know.
It's still hanging on. It's out on the deck. It's grown one new little thing, but most of it is still the husk of a plant that it used to be.
I was going to ask, does it have a name? Because I feel at this point it is as much a part of this podcast as either one of you on Thursdays, even though it now lives outside, which is, just slightly better than where I live in my home.
I'm pretty sure it's not Lazarus. I'll tell you that much.
No.
Or maybe it is.
It'd be poorly named if I named it that.
Maybe we'll name it Arsenal.
Here's the thing. I'll come up with a name by the end of this. I'll come up with a name by the end of it.
Let's call it Mikel Arteta. Tonight, thank you very much, Mr. Walnut. Thank you for revealing I'm 27 years old today. As you can tell by the stress.
How many 27-year-olds did you eat to get to that side?
About, I don't know. I lost count after the 17th because I have to accompany it with the vodka milk, the chocolate milk with the vodka in it. So things get a bit blurry after the 17th one. Fair. But yes, thank you very much, Alan. But we'll get straight into it tonight because Jurgen Klopp, our glorious leader, I'm not said in a sarcastic way at all. He is our glorious leader. 2-match ban for how he talks to referees. There is a case to be made that we don't want coaches to be, a bad example to the grassroots coaches out there and thinking that they can get away with the same things. But as we've mentioned several times in this podcast over the weeks, and I'm sure on the Monday podcast, and I'm sure on the breakfast one, the morning coffees, the refereeing in England this season has been nothing short of abysmal, hasn't it, Gally?
Yeah, it's the worst I've seen. I've been watching the sport 25, 30 years. At a competitive level, it was a lot harder when I was younger to get matches over here from overseas. But I've been following it all along. In the last 12 to 13 years, they've been readily available. I've been, serially addicted to the point where, I think I've ruined a relationship and Kelly wants to leave me over how much football I watch. So I've seen my fair share, and this is by far the worst. And I'll go to a different topic later. I'll stay on this one because we're going to come back to Klopp. It's so bad that I defend poor referees because there are so many worse, like that consistently do it worse, which is where I can understand why these coaches are having a hard time. I'll kind of end my statement there because I think I'm just kind of agreeing with the overall sentiment. I have my own opinions on Klopp and this situation and what led up to it, in my opinion. But, overall, the level of refereeing in England is so poor, which is crazy because it's the most competitive league in the world. It has the most money in the world. And it has the most eyeballs because of its TV rights all over the world. You would think the one thing they want to get right is the refereeing so that we can feel like the game is like actually fair and balanced to what we're all watching and everyone else is paying so much for us to watch, right?
Trevor, that's a great point Gali made. But it's not even a case that they're just bad for everybody because clearly there are some biases that I believe are fairly obvious, at least in certain games. Is it a case that, as we spoke about last time, Howard Webb is in charge of the whole thing, so the referees have now taken on the personality of Howard Webb, which is arrogant narcissism with power in its back pocket? Or have they just really messed up the recruitment since they all went full-time and there isn't any standard anymore like there may have been in the past?
Yeah, and the one thing I want to really echo from Gally's thing is defending poor referees because there are so many worse. That is something that pains my soul on any given weekend, because you're sitting there going, okay, well, this guy only missed 3 calls. Yeah, that's what we're viewing as upper tier at this point. A guy that doesn't miss the call in the 77th minute, but he botches 17 in the lead up. That's the guy that we're holding on a pedestal. And I do think it comes back from that lack of accountability and that lack of, not necessarily a standard, because they like to just fall back on, well, it's the law of how it's written and so on and so forth. But there's got to come a time where there's accountability. And we're talking about Klopp and what he's getting for what he did. None of these referees that have any poor record or anything get any sort of real demotion. What? Oh, you don't get put on to this A-tier game this week. The next time it comes around, they're just going to think everybody forgot that this guy stunk, so we're going to get him back again. And I like to bring it up to Muchin's favorite sport, baseball. Angel Hernandez has serially been one of the most dog shit umpires in the game for decades. And this year is finally the year where I think the league has just gone, enough with this guy. He's getting barely any assignments, and the ones he's getting, he's either put in a position to not have a huge effect on the game. I think this really needs to start happening with some of these guys in England, because unless there's accountability for how poor they are, they're not going to, A, want to improve, B, feel like they need to do anything better, or C, just that they're just going to go about their business. And like we go back to Howard Webb, if there's nothing that he's going to say on a weekly basis, what are they going to do?
Gally, in terms of accountability there, I saw this week that they've started to release little snippets of what the conversations are between the referees and the VAR, but they seem to me, cherry-picked the obvious ones, the ones where, they look great doing it. Yeah, the ones that we can look at and go, oh, these guys are so good at their job. But that just smacks of a public relations campaign, really, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And there was a little bit of talk about how next season they genuinely believe they're going to I think they're going to test it in 2 or 3 matches next weekend, or the final weekend of the year, where they're going to broadcast to the listeners the conversations between the referee and the VAR. So they feel like, why are we hiding it from anyone? Like, we're taking 20 minutes to figure out whether or not the guy is offsides without drawing lines on the screen. Let's tell him what we're looking at. At least tell him what. I mean, how many times have you watched it when we don't know, right? The random VARs. And then they show us 3 different angles because TV doesn't know what they're looking at. So at one moment, they're like, I think they're offsides. And they're looking at offsides. And all of a sudden, they just jump over to this guy's hand flailing off from his ass, right? Is that this guy's hand? Is that defender's hand? Was that there? Is it deliberate? Is it the offensive player? And therefore, it's just chalked off. You have no idea. And then all of a sudden, you get 22 seconds earlier up the goddamn pitch, finding out that freaking they're deciding whether a ball that came off a hip brushed a fingernail, and therefore it's handball in the buildup 45 seconds earlier. And you're like, but why didn't we just talk about the fact that the fucking guy was offsides and the official didn't put up his flag? And this is where I think, before we get to the Klopp thing, I'll get it off my chest, little fucking Galley Thursday night rant. I genuinely believe all of this, right, is predicated on VAR. And it's not that I don't like VAR. I understand the concept of VAR. It was supposed to be here to make sure that egregious goals like the one scored by Chelsea against us to beat us in 2004 from 8 yards offsides isn't really given, right? When Hazard's 5 yards past the last defender and scores a goal and the guy doesn't raise his flag. That's what VAR was here for. It was here to, catch a couple of Suarez's dives and not award them as penalties. That's why I thought we had VAR. The most egregious mistakes. But we didn't get that. It's a system to allow refs not to referee on the field and to be protected, which then allows them to lose control. And I genuinely go back to the days of like 02 to 05 and then forward. I thought the referees were starting to like actually earn some mutual respect with players. They were figuring each other out. They knew when fucking, Roy Keane was getting sent off the moment he went into a tackle because the ref and him knew when he did it, all right, they drop their head, they walk off the pitch. Nowadays, we have these guys flailing and flopping. We have the fighting. I don't blame refs either for acting like entitled douchebags when all the players act the way they do for 90 minutes on the pitch, making their job so much more difficult. And then we have these VAR situations that make no sense. I said the same thing in the American Football League when they reinstated instant replay. It allows referees on the field to not feel like they have to make crucial calls because there's someone with TV upstairs. And that, to me, takes everything away from the game. And I think then it falls to inconsistencies. So I blame a lot of this, honestly, on VAR for what is like become the ongoing detriment. And it's also the attitudes of the players. Like those two factors, I believe, is why refereeing is going to get worse. There's a shortage of refs all over the world because who the fuck wants to be treated like this?
Trevor, my personal bugbear for years with refereeing was that when they were part-time referees, they had a job to fall back on generally. At least in England, it was the thing. Like you'd see the no-name referees, as we mentioned before. You didn't know who they were, but you'd see Colin Woodstock from Altrincham, part-time or full-time teacher. You'd see their job underneath, and to an extent, like they were always harsh referees as well. And it was almost like, well, if I don't do this next weekend, I'm still paying my mortgage. Whereas now with the referees being number one full-time and number two almost celebrities in themselves, do you think that maybe there's that sense of they don't want to cause controversy, they don't want to stir the pot because they want to be refereeing the next week at that high level where they can show off their gelled hair or their shaved dome like mine and their paunch also like mine?
Yeah, there has to just be a bit of hubris when it comes to being a referee these days, just because it's a bit of a celebrity, and sometimes it's a bit of infamy when it comes to some of these guys, and I don't think they really particularly care how people are remembering their name. That the fact that they're getting UEFA and FIFA gigs just because, this guy was on NBC 2 weeks ago. People are going to know him. And some of these institutions are just realizing we don't want to know. And I say it constantly. We don't want to know the name of the ref. I would rather not know a single referee. I would rather not go through the fixture list on every weekend, look who is reffing our game and just go, shit. We got this guy. We got Anthony Taylor this week. We got Paul Tierney this week. We got fucking David Cootie Man Cootie this week. Shit. Because you just know what's coming, and it's just painful.
I read today that Anthony Taylor, sorry, Macka, Anthony Taylor was up for a European final. He's probably going to end up officiating the Europa League final. He was that high up on UEFA's overall rankings. Like, this is the part that drives me crazy, because I think Anthony Taylor is a terrible official against Liverpool. I do believe Anthony Taylor is probably the best on-field match official in the Premier League. Like, I really do. I've always said this. I used to think it was Michael Oliver. He was so young and commanded the game really well, and then he's never responded from giving the red card to the event. I can't think of it now. The Juventus keeper that he sent off against Madrid, and then he lost his shit, and the match lost it, and Madrid went through. He's never made up for that moment because he just lost it in one of his biggest opportunities. But Anthony Taylor is like a really high-level ranked official. But the lucky draw is you got City and West Ham in European finals. And I don't think they allow for a referee from the country in which they referee to officiate the final. So I think he's either going to end up getting Europa or getting like a fourth official job. But we still have some of the highest ranked refs, which lets you know if you watch the other leagues, the refereeing is just as terrible there.
Trevor, let's get on to the Klopp thing. So we could spend hours just talking about the referees themselves, but from literally from day one, Jurgen Klopp has been prone to not thinking before he said things. I always like the kind of the moment for me before any soccer was even done, before a ball was kicked, when you knew Jurgen Klopp was the man for Liverpool, was when he started swearing about the Crystal Palace game. Well, no, a ball was kicked, but like before he got his feet under the table, he's talking about that effing result against Crystal Palace in a press conference, and you just know that guy just doesn't care about what he's talking about. So, do you think that it's a genuine outburst? Is he just that frustrated at this point, or is it calculated almost that he's trying to draw attention to how bad the refereeing is?
I think it's a bit of just, it's not necessarily situational, but there comes times with him where you can see it bubbling up, because NBC loves to cut to him and Pep and all of these managers. They love that reaction shot, especially when it's off of something controversial. And you had kind of seen over the course of that second half that Klopp was starting to get more and more clenched and more aggravated. You couldn't quite piece together what event was setting him off with each passing time that they came to him. But there was a point where it was kind of come to critical mass, and it did. And I think it's something where he knows that he kind of has that platform to speak his mind, even if it is in a bit of a not an uncouth type of way, to really just let it go, whether it be on the field or in a press conference. He feels like he's been given that gravitas. But I think he's a guy that, okay, you're going to be banned from the touchline for one game. And as a conditional second game, like it's a NBA trade, a game to be served in the stands later. Is anything going to change from it? Is he going to be more docile when he comes back? No. Is there going to be any more sanctions on a potential referee? No. So in the end, this accomplishes nothing.
Gary, in terms of I wouldn't call it necessarily an overreaction, because we've seen the decisions, and at some point, there has to be a straw that breaks the camel's back. But do we need more managers to react to, maybe not on the field, but at least in the press conferences afterwards, to the bad refereeing, and then maybe leave the public displays in their heads, because as we said, what happens at the top level gets reflected down at the youth level at some point soon after. Or is it a case that managers are just getting more and more frustrated in the Premier League, because, as you say, it's the most popular league in the world, it's the richest league in the world, it has the most eyeballs on it, and yet we're getting decisions that you would be embarrassed by at an amateur game?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. I think one, the managers are under higher pressure because and not that this is Klopp, because this is just who he is, but overall, these managers are literally coaching for their jobs almost week in and week out. And these are there's 20 of these jobs that pay this way. Again, I've come back to this, right? The lowest paid manager in the Premier League is probably third or fourth in Italy, in Germany, in Spain. This is the money they're making. There's managers in the Championship making more than managers that will go to the Champions League next year from these countries, from other countries. So England's money is just so flush. And I think these coaches know that they're there, and these decisions are so important. And then it's also how they're perceived. So to your first point, I think they should speak out more in the press conferences. Now, I think they have to do it. And as much as we hate this guy, right? Unless you love the character that is the dark evil Jose, as he makes it to another European final, like people, I can just feel him right now, like just like ruining with a bottle of red wine and just like dancing naked in a room, singing about what he's gonna do and how he's gonna win this title, send Roma to the Champions League, and then walk out like he did last time in Italy that he did this and go to PSG. But like there is something to be said, right, for how these managers act, and you have to speak judiciously if you're going to criticize in a press conference. I think the clubs need to do a better job. I think the clubs themselves need to defend themselves without calling it fraud, without saying there's bias. They need to demand for a higher level of officiating to help their managers. Because here's the thing. When Klopp goes crazy and yells at Lee Mason for not sending someone off and gets a yellow or a red card, I don't have a problem. When he goes off at Tierney for plays on the field and issues, I don't have a problem. But this is where I may disagree with you guys. He could have got a 5-match ban for what he did here. Because this is the thing. He ran over to a professional doing their job after we scored and swore in his face as if that guy was against us. Not the guy on the field after the match arguing about a specific call. That's what like unhinged people do. And I've spent a whole shitload of Mondays ripping Arteta and saying the reason they won't win the league is they lead the league in red cards because they follow his act when times get tough. We didn't have a great year. And when times get tough, our manager doesn't look great. And that was a terrible look in a good moment. And I'm the type of supporter, I will say, he's the greatest manager I've ever seen, and I would want him managing me and my children. I'd want him being my dad, my coach, my mentor. But in that moment, if he cared about me, I'd tell him I think he looked like an ass. Because we scored a goal to win, and you showed a guy up. It was straight up bad.
That's a nice famous galley rant for the shorts. But very true though as well. Like as anybody who's been involved in youth soccer coaching for a while, sometimes the person that's on the line is the only person you can talk to, but that doesn't necessarily make it right. I think
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't make it right. But as you say, Trevor, if we tie everything together, if we tie the high stakes, number one, the possibility, even though he's Jurgen Klopp and even though he's been so brilliant for us, we know owners can turn on a dime sometimes on their opinions of the managers, no matter how successful they are. Is the pressure that great and the refereeing that bad that it drives managers like Klopp to that kind of reaction? Or is that just in his makeup? And he probably needs some anger management classes somewhere down the line to calm himself down a bit.
Yeah, I think if you throw all of what you just said into a blender, you kind of will find a mix of a little bit of truth to everything there. There is something where he does need to dial it back. I don't want him to lose that intensity, but there has to come a time where you know, like the time and the place. Yeah, okay, if you're getting battered and you go in there and you make a scene like that's almost like your manager getting ejected. You're just going, you know what? I want them to see that I still care. So I'm just going to go make a complete scene, ask myself, run into the stands and have a big pageantry of it. But yeah, have it be in a circumstance where it's not going to be super effectual to the game itself. Whether or not guys with that type of influence saying things is going to affect the overall officiating. Before Howard Webb kind of became the czar of it, I thought maybe there would be a sliver of a chance, because if you had a lot of these money-making entities, from the networks to the FA to the league owners and all this stuff, if they really started to like just push back on it, they would either force new guys to get in or they would actually present accountability. But until they instead of doing that, they just pivoted. Oh, look at this guy who used to be the face of overfishing. He's back. And now we'll see how that ends up. Probably not too great down the line, but either way, that there's just a lot of moving pieces, and I really just hope that and I'll circle back to what Gally said about VAR. It was supposed to be to get calls right, not to make sure that the officials were proven right. And I think that if we can work on that, a lot of the other problems will take care of themselves.
To move on, but to kind of dial back a step or 10. So we talked about Mikel Arteta and the team essentially modeling his behavior with how he goes. Now, we could just let Gally go here now, and me and Trevor can go make several sandwiches, eat them, have a bowl of ice cream, come back down, make a float, and still be on time for the end of it. But Gally, Mikel Arteta,
I brought it
at
back
the start of the season, we could probably brew the beer from scratch, Trevor, and Gally still wouldn't be finished. But at the start of the season, I remember we did one of the podcasts, probably with Jamie, and we talked about that documentary, the Arsenal All or Nothing or whatever it was.
Yep.
And all the gimmicky things that he did. And I expressed my opinion that it's just gimmicks. All that kind of the way he's talking to the players, it's almost learned. It's almost Brendan Rodgers like, in that you could turn to page 27 of the UEFA manager's textbook, and that's exactly what it tells you to do. But it really is his personality almost, isn't it, that made Arsenal the serial bottlers, the bottleriest of bottlers of all time at this point this season.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think anything was going to make me feel better today after losing my pathetic fantasy matchup to Bickler in the American Scouser head-to-head.
That explains why he's in the comments, Gally. That's why he's in the comments.
Of course he is. He's just warming up. He's getting liquored up for the next show, so he can really come in with some
he's prodding you. He's prodding you.
He's just coming in little fun stuff. But no, the truth is, like, I didn't think, like, it's but he's so frustrating. But the only thing that would bring any joy to me is like thinking about the fact, and people are always like, yeah, I can't believe how much you hate Arsenal. Why wouldn't you want Arsenal to win? Like, I actually watched football before City existed. I remember how miserable and unbearable Arsenal fans are when they're on top. All you supporters who came on a decade ago, you don't know. You don't even know. All you had was like that Van Persie team that finished fourth by 1 point and then got blown out in the like group stages of the Champions League. They wish they were in the Europa League. Like, no one wants Arsenal back. And as I always say, we only can compete with so many teams. And the more teams that actually win will believe they can win. And they will continue to be back. So, like, for me, this was perfect. And in some ways, it's almost better because I think it knocks Arsenal way down. Like, I think this knocks Arsenal back. That if they don't hit absolute home runs in the transfer market this season, I think they regress next season because I think we will be better. I think United will actually be better. Like, I think there are other teams on the up, and I think this was a shot. Like, remember in 13-14 with Brendan Rodgers when we almost won it, right? And we were like, we almost fucking did it. We're never going to do this. This could be Arsenal for another decade. They got a whole shit ton of young talent. But a lot of that's going to get bought up pretty soon, too. So I think it's going to be a really telling summer for Arsenal. And if you can't tell, I'm loving every goddamn second of it.
Trevor, I remember probably even further back than Gally, the Arsenal of the George Graham era, who were tactically very good. Once you get older and you're into the tactics, they actually did some very good stuff. But listening to 1-0 to the Arsenal every week was pretty depressing. And furthermore, nobody probably over here would understand this, but if you watched soccer in Britain or Ireland back in the day in the 1990s, in the old Highbury Stadium, wherever the camera was positioned, there was some idiot who used to do a little tuneful whistle every single game in the second half, and it was annoying as hell. So just raised the Arsenal annoyance factor. So it is it's a good thing to see Arsenal bottling it again. But is Mikel Arteta the main factor in that? Was it just the inexperience of the players? Or do they have a justifiable excuse that City is just a behemoth and they're just impossible to dislodge?
The City factor is something that nobody can really just erase at this point. But we've had to deal with it. United's had to deal with it. Newcastle's going to have to deal with it in the next couple of years. Chelsea's have to deal with it. And Arsenal had the most advantageous position out of all of us that have had to deal with this City machine. They had everything in their hands, and they had City still on the schedule. They had everything coming up for them. They had teams at the bottom of the league at home. They had everything lined up, and they filled their pants both legs. Just shit running down each side. No escaping it. And it's something that it has to come back to the manager mostly, because we talk about the young players and all the talent they have. But if it comes to a point where you're asking these guys to go you have to just go win 1-0 today. I don't care if it's pretty. I don't care if it's sexy. I don't care if it is methodical. You cannot go drop points to a team that pretty much resigned to the fact that they were going to be relegated a fucking month ago. You can't do it. And if you can't beat Southampton in a title push, you don't fucking deserve to win the title. And the fact that they followed that up with just more and more garbage, yeah, bottle job complete. Put that in your bottle cellar. Fucking drink up the sad. Down the Arsenal.
Gary, is it a case that do you think? I know there are certain things that Brendan Rodgers has been given credit for by the players that played under him in terms of his actual on-field coaching. The stuff that the stuff that trains the players. But there are the huge flaws in his personality, the egotism, the stubbornness, etc. Do you think the young players looked at Mikel Arteta and saw themselves probably, because they probably watched themselves on that show as well, and said, he looks like a bit of a clown, and he's doing the same things now and they're not working. So there's the gimmick revealed, or is it just that he has a head shaped and made of Lego and they just couldn't get past that fact?
I think it's first of all, he for a fact has a head shaped of Lego. I think on top of it, they also looked at him and was like, he's kind of a clown, but they also realized like he's a clown that's leading us a lot further along than anything we've had so far. I mean, these players play for him. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like he gets the same hugs at the end of the matches. I don't think the guys show up for training and don't want to play for Mikel Arteta. Like he comes across as a very much a Klopp, like Pep type of. He loves to train. He probably likes to put on cleats and kick people. Like he still looks like he thinks he can kick every ball. I mean, he does it from the touchline. So I think with him, it's the question of are you good enough? Like Pep wanted him to stay there and succeed him because he thought he was a brilliant manager but needed more work, or he wouldn't have said, stay here and succeed me. He'd say, go do your own shit and succeed me, right? Like, and I don't blame him for taking the Arsenal job. That's like Lampard turning down Chelsea when he was at Derby. Should he have stayed at Derby and kept learning how to be a mediocre manager? Then maybe he could have been like Palace's manager someday and been mediocre. Yeah. But no, Chelsea said, you want the fucking job? And Frank said, yep. Just like after getting fired and then getting fired at fucking Everton, they were like, hey, you want the job? He's like, yep. He knew it wasn't going to be good. It ain't helping him get another job. But how do you say no? Like, you do it, right? Like, he watched Di Matteo win the fucking Champions League, and that freaking balding dude got a second gig. Got there for like 11 games. They were like, why do we have the fucking janitor managing the European champions? Oh, he managed us the European Championship? Nah, fuck it. Get him out of here. Like, it's a, you know what I mean? Managing is so crazy, and I think that's the moment Arteta's in. He has a short window. I think if it doesn't work next year, by the middle of next year, the year after, he's gone. Like, they got so close. It's almost like what Rodgers did, right? They got so close. They gave him one more full year, the year in the Champions League. He started the next year. It wasn't working. They were like, get the fuck out. We got guys here that are close. We need a manager who can get them there. And you know what? As much as it pains me to say, Arsenal's got guys that are there that are close. And if they buy right, they're going to have guys there that can win things. I don't know that they have a manager that can pull that together, because I still believe he will let you down in big spots.
Trevor, do you think that's a fair assessment of Arteta? Is it just that, he has that character flaw, or he has that knowledge gap that he maybe, as Gally suggests, should have stayed at City to learn from Guardiola and from that whole environment? Or is it possible he will progress and suddenly show the fortitude, the good old WWF intestinal fortitude that he hasn't shown this season?
Now, I think he is a guy that I don't necessarily think he is Frank Lampard in terms of where he has that ceiling. I think he could be a top four manager. He's proven it this year that he is a top four manager, at least in the sense of he can get teams into the top four. That will. To be fair
though, so did David Moyes.
Right. When he got a team into a top four with Liverpool playing the way they are, Spurs being an absolute fucking carfuckus, even though they probably have just as much talent on their roster. If they had Mikel Arteta at Spurs, they'd be ahead of Arsenal right now, because Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, and Kulusevski are all actually better probably than what Arsenal puts out there when they play together. This is what I always say. That's what drives me nuts. Like, this league is the differences are so small. And in a year where everyone sucked, Arsenal looks great.
Yeah.
But really, are they great? Or is this Leicester winning the league because no one else could get 82.5 points?
I think it's something where he's a guy that has shown all his cards though. There's no more. He can't go to his next job and go, well, look at the new thing I'm going to bring to the table. The book is closed on Mikel Arteta reinventing himself or reinventing any way he's going to manage a football team. And wherever he ends up after this, because I really do think I'm in agreement where it's going to be kind of a Rodgers scenario next year. If they get bounced in the group of the Champions League, or if they are outside the top four by January, he's out on his ass, 100%. I think there's something there where he's got to just break out of what he feels that he knows best, and I don't know, maybe go hang out with Pep on a vacation and just pick his brain and see if you can figure out ways that, because what you're doing isn't sustainable. And it's shown. They papered over a lot of cracks this year with a lot of those guys, but the second they started having to play what Brighton is doing right now when they're playing guys that are central midfielders at fullbacks, and when they had no answers and they were trying to just play, instead of trying to adapt to a situation with your roster, he's just like, no, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put this guy there, and he knows what he's got to do. But is he physically capable to do what he knows he has to do? And there's never any of that pliability with Arteta's mechanics, and he's going to show in the future whether he can just be that guy that, well, look at this. I got second. Fantastic. All right. Is that going to be your crowning achievement? A silver fucking medal? Good for you. Yeah. And if that's good enough for him and that's good enough for Arsenal, just, pat yourself on the back. You got the good try. And then, and then they run it back with somebody else. I don't know where they go from here. If they can't figure out, like Gally said, if they don't buy exceptionally well, and I mean exceptionally well is you have to hit on like 2 or 3 guys, because that's what's going to put you into that next echelon. Because if you just go get a couple of squad players and a mid-level striker, we're going to be having this same conversation with them next season, but it's going to be down a tier, because now that they've been found out, there's no more surprises. Everybody is going to know how to game plan them appropriately, and they're going to suffer because of it, because they don't adapt, they don't change.
Just for Mikel Arteta to actually pat himself on the back, you'd have to get rid of the Lego arms, because they only bend one way. So I think that would be near impossibility.
Plus, it wouldn't get past the top section of his head.
Of the head, yeah, exactly.
Lego on,
exactly.
A little circle, it would get stuck.
It would get stuck. So let's move on for the last thing.
No, you get the thinner hair.
That's
you
true.
Just replace it.
Have you seen that man's head of hair? It's part of the reason I hate him. Look at his hair. Look at my hair. I used to have luxurious Italian-looking, flowing, Spanish-like hair like him. Nice, greasy, wavy. Now I just get this half-receded, freaking balding cowlick.
You're doing way better than I am, Gally. So let's move on to the last part for the night, and let's look ahead to the weekend. We've got Aston Villa. We've talked before, I think, about the difference in Steven Gerrard managing Aston Villa and Unai Emery managing Aston Villa. We've also got the kind of added almost sadness of, we can start counting down the last few games for Bobby, for Milner. We've already counted down the last few games for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, to be fair. So we know that one ended a long time ago.
He's never even getting a shirt again.
Yeah, that's true. But do we go for who? So we want to go full strength. Obviously, we should be playing this campaign till the last drop, until there's no more to be fought for. But do we have room for sentimentality in a game like this, Gally? Can we see Bobby play a significant part, or should we continue to go with what's been working?
He has not even been fit to be on the bench. He can't do anything except for come on for a beautiful song in stoppage time, hopefully up 3-1 or better. I love the man. If he was playing, if he had been a sub for the last 5, right, then I'd say give him a goddamn start. If it's going so bad, yank him at half and take him out on the 46 minutes so he can get his big ovation and do his thing, right? But you can't play sentimentality. Like, United's got to get 6 points out of a possible 9, and Arsenal or Newcastle's got to get another 4 points, or another point. Like, you have to go that route. 2 points, sorry. You got to go that route. You got to play for Champions League, trying to get to 71 and put the pressure on everyone else on the last day. And I don't think the way that Diaz, Gakpo, and Mo look right now up top, there should be any reason that you would be breaking them up, just like there's no reason for me playing 1 match a week. You'd be breaking up Curtis Jones, Hendo, and Fab. It's the best anything has looked all year long with Trent playing in this role. It would be maddening to literally start Milner and Bobby. That, you want to talk about some Chelsea shit? That's some Chelsea shit. Well, they're legends. No, they'll always be goddamn legends. And they'll get sung off that pitch whether they come on or not. I mean, you saw the way they sang Bobby last weekend on the road. It was beautiful. But you know what? He loved it. And that might have been the moment he needs. I'm not sure Bobby's going to put the uniform on, guys. I honestly think he's done. I think the injuries are pretty bad, and I think Klopp knows he doesn't want to rush it out. Will we see Milner to come out for 12 minutes and a yellow card? Hell yes. and I hope the place gives him the biggest standing O, because he might be the best signing in the last 15 years at Liverpool Football Club. And everyone can laugh at me for saying it. All the winning, I agree with Klopp, all the winning started with James Milner coming, and he came before Jurgen did.
Yes, that's the one bit of credit we can give Brendan Rodgers, possibly. We don't know. Trevor, in terms of the attacking setup, where are we seeing Núñez for this? Because I agree with Gary there. I don't think we should be breaking up Diaz, Salah, and Gakpo. But we did pay a hefty price for Núñez, and we should be seeing something, shouldn't we?
Yeah, and that's why I kind of want the only thing I want to see from these last two games, other than 2 wins, obviously, is a bit of a change to like the substitution patterns. I want to kind of see if you can kind of almost turn it into like shifts where you can bring in these guys at different times rather than just throwing on 3 guys for shits and giggles at the end of the game and then 2 subs in just around the hour mark. I think there's a lot more that Klopp could do with his bench. Well, or Pep Linders this week from his bench. And that's I think Núñez's thing is, for at least these last 2 games, is to attack tired legs. And I want to see just, because you don't want to view him as a super sub going forward. That's not what he was brought in for. But
that's not what it'll be.
For at least these last 2 games, I want him to just have a full hour of showing people what he can do, murdering tired legs. That's what I want to see from Darwin Núñez. And as for Bobby, he probably shouldn't play this week. And when we're up 3-0 on Southampton, that final thing, getting everybody doing "Si Senor," he comes on for the final 14 seconds. That would be poignant. Other than that, let them sing to him from the stands.
Yeah.
Gally, score prediction for Saturday.
I think it's gonna be. I'll go with my staple 3-1, but I don't think it'll be that close. Like I feel like we're that team now. We'll probably go up 2-0, look like we're in the driver's seat, playing great, creating all kinds of chances, not scoring. They'll score one, it'll be squeaky bum, and then we'll get one because they press to try to move on forward. I think we get all 3 points. I genuinely believe we get to 71 points at this point. Today was my big one. I really thought Brighton could beat Newcastle today, and that could set us up to have a real good chance. Because I think Leicester has a chance to take points off Newcastle in a must-win type game. And I think, Chelsea is Chelsea. You never know. So I thought Newcastle might be the one that would slip up. But I'm going to go 3-1. Good guys. Gakpo goal.
Trevor, what do you think?
I was going to say 2-1. I'm not giving that late rebuttal after that. I think we go up 2-0 and Villa scores in the 87th and makes that last 10 minutes of the game unbearable.
I'm going to go controversial 5-3, a good old fashioned 1960 scoreline.
Are you going to go? But we're winning 5-3, I hope.
Yes, we're definitely winning 5-3. So just before we wrap up, the threshold question, I think it's an easy one tonight. 3-0 for Alan there. So a nice variety of scores. Here's the threshold question for both of you. Whose hair would you rather have, Mikel Arteta's or Antonio Conte's?
Well, I mean, at least with Conte's, that shit ain't ever going to change. I'm pretty sure that Mikel Arteta's is still growing. He might have a little bit of filler in there, but I think that thing's still real. I think that thing on Conte's head is sewn in like dudes who get fucking tattoos of their wedding rings and then get divorced. Like, that dude's going to die with that same head of hair. He's going to be 93 years old, drinking a bottle of Red Chianti, fucking hammering down a Mub Medium. And literally someone's going to be like, this dude's dead. And they're going to be like, but look at that fucking hair. Like, Conte's hair hasn't moved since 1983. And that's impressive.
Yeah,
Trevor,
I got to go with the Lego head because my cat doesn't do well with other animals, so I wouldn't want to bring that into the house.
Yeah, pretty sure I saw Conte's hair on the side of the road last night. Here's the thing, Mr. Galley, is there a fantasy show straight after us?
Yes, we are doing a fantasy show. It'll be hosted by our good friend Matoush, who is still in the fantasy league, and I think he won today because, well, he got a bye in the first round. It wasn't really a bye, but he went against Timuchin, who's still starting Cancelo. And that dude plays for in Germany and barely starts there. So seeing that he's in the starting lineup of his fantasy team, it made for an easy victory for Matoush as he walked through. I took the loss to Bickler. Kelly took the loss on the chin to BJ. So not a good night here in the Galvin household when it comes to the fantasy stuff. We're going to do a show so everyone can make fun of me.
There you go. Make sure everybody who's into the fantasy league stays tuned for that straight after this show. And then also subscribe, join the Discord channel, follow us on Facebook and Spotify and all the good outlets, and make sure we're watching the Morning Coffee and the Monday podcasts. Because that's where the action is. This is more the regret. This Thursday night show is the regret show. Monday night show is the action show. Just remember
about that. You got lots of regrets. You ever watch that shit on a Tuesday? You realize you regret it getting up on Monday.
Yeah, I was trying to leave Bickler out of it. So just remains to say thank you, Trevor, and thank you, Gally, for stepping in tonight. Enjoy the fantasy football show. We shall see everybody next Thursday. Make sure you tune in and make sure you enjoy the weekend. Peace out, everybody.